Before that slap echoed through the ballroom, before the silence swallowed his pride, there was a man who truly believed the world bowed at his feet. Every morning, Daniel's black luxury sedan glided through the financial district, past towering glass skyscrapers reflecting the rising sun. Street vendors arranged their stalls on the sidewalks below, while junior employees hurried through revolving doors clutching coffee cups and tablets. Above them all, on the 42nd floor of the company's headquarters, Daniel stood in his corner office overlooking the entire city. From up there, everything looked small. He liked it that way. Adjusting his tailored navy suit, he admired his reflection in the glass. The skyline stretched behind him like a kingdom he had conquered. "They need me," he once told a senior board member during a private strategy meeting. "Without my leadership, this company would collapse in months." The boardroom had fallen silent then, just as it always did when Daniel spoke. The long mahogany table gleamed beneath white recessed lights. Charts of rising profits glowed on the digital screen behind him. "And who secured the foreign investors?" he continued confidently. "Who expanded us into 3 new markets?" "Me." A few board members nodded cautiously. Others exchanged looks but remained quiet. Success had made him untouchable, or so he believed. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit the like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more shocking real-life twists. His assistant, Clara, often watched from the sidelines as his ego expanded alongside quarterly profits. "Sir, the legal department requested your review on the merger documents," she once reminded him gently. Daniel waved a dismissive hand without looking up from his tablet. "They worry too much. Growth requires boldness." Boldness. That was the word he liked to use. Not risk. Not recklessness. At corporate dinners, he spoke loudly about his company, his vision, his empire. Investors laughed at his jokes. Journalists quoted his statements. Employees feared disappointing him. Power had a way of blinding him. He no longer remembered the early days when he was just an ambitious executive trying to prove himself. Now, he believed he was the foundation itself, the pillar holding everything upright. And the more the company flourished, the more his pride hardened into something dangerous. Because when a man starts believing he owns everything, he stops questioning whether it was ever truly his. And soon, that illusion would begin to crack. While Daniel ruled the skyline from his glass tower, there was another world waiting for him each evening, quieter, softer, and far more sincere. Their home stood in an upscale neighborhood overlooking the city's western hills, where jacaranda trees lined the streets and the scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted through open windows. It was elegant, yes, but not extravagant. No gold-plated gates. No flashing displays of wealth. Just warm lights, cream-colored walls, and the faint sound of instrumental music playing in the background. And at the center of that calm stood Aisha. She preferred simple dresses in soft pastel shades, her hair usually tied back loosely. A delicate bracelet rested on her wrist, the only jewelry she wore daily. One hand often cradled her growing belly as she moved gently through the house, speaking to their unborn child in whispers. "You'll be strong," she would murmur with a faint smile. "Stronger than anyone expects." When Daniel came home late, usually tense from meetings, she was always there. "How was your day?" she would ask softly, setting a warm meal on the table. "Busy," he'd reply, loosening his tie. "You wouldn't understand. It's complicated corporate strategy." She never argued. She simply nodded. But what he didn't notice was how her eyes subtly scanned the financial headlines on his tablet. How she listened carefully when he discussed expansion plans. How she occasionally asked questions that were sharper than he realized. "Are you sure the overseas partnership has stable backing?" she once asked while pouring him tea. Daniel laughed lightly. "You worry too much. Leave business to me." She lowered her gaze, hiding the quiet flicker in her eyes. To outsiders, she appeared modest, almost invisible at corporate events. She avoided interviews. She declined public recognition. Even the staff assumed she was simply the supportive spouse of a powerful executive. No designer labels. No luxury cars in her name. No social media presence boasting wealth. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Because true power does not always announce itself. Sometimes, it watches. Sometimes, it waits. And as she stood by the window that night, city lights reflecting in her thoughtful eyes, there was a depth to her silence, a secret layered beneath her calm. A secret that no one in that glittering ballroom would see coming. Long before Daniel ever stepped into the spotlight, before the boardroom applause and flashing cameras, this company had a different beginning. It began in a modest office above a crowded marketplace, where the sounds of bargaining vendors and honking minibuses echoed through open windows. A single wooden desk. A metal filing cabinet. A man with a vision. Aisha's father. He wasn't born into wealth. He built it. Contract by contract. Risk by risk. Late nights fueled by tea and determination. Employees still remembered how he walked through the office floors greeting janitors by name. Respect every person in this building, he would tell young Aisha when she visited after school. Because a company is not walls and numbers. It is people. She had been barely 25 when illness took him unexpectedly. The rain had poured heavily the night the lawyers gathered in the family living room, documents spread across a polished mahogany table. The senior legal advisor adjusted his glasses and spoke gently. "Miss Aisha, your father transferred 62% of the company's shares into your name." The room had gone still. "You are now the majority shareholder." Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the papers. Ownership. Power. Responsibility. "But no one needs to know immediately," the lawyer continued. "You may remain a silent owner. The board can appoint an acting executive." And that was the moment she made her choice. She didn't want power built on fear. She didn't want loyalty forced by inheritance. She wanted to see who truly deserved to lead. So she stayed quiet. She allowed the board to appoint Daniel, ambitious, intelligent, promising. At first, she admired his drive. She believed he could grow what her father had built. From behind the scenes, she reviewed reports. She read every financial statement. She watched every major decision unfold. And slowly, she began to see what others did not. Confidence turning into arrogance. Authority turning into ego. Still, she remained silent. Because sometimes truth reveals itself best when given time. Daniel believed he was standing on the foundation of his own greatness. But he was standing on her inheritance. And he had no idea that the woman he dismissed at home was the silent force holding the entire empire together. The night of the gala, as she stepped into that ballroom, she already knew the board had prepared documents. She had hoped she wouldn't need them. But fate was moving faster than she had planned. The ballroom lights felt harsher now. Moments earlier, soft jazz had floated through the air, blending with polite laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Now, the music had faded into an uneasy silence. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the stage. Aisha stood only a few steps away from Daniel, her hand resting protectively over her pregnant belly. The golden embroidery of her gown shimmered under the chandelier light, but her face remained calm, almost too calm. Daniel's jaw tightened as whispers spread across the room. "You always do this," he said through clenched teeth, forcing a smile for the watching guests. "You wait for the perfect moment to embarrass me." "I'm not trying to embarrass you," Aisha replied softly. "I'm trying to prevent a mistake." A few investors shifted uncomfortably. Board members avoided eye contact. Camera lenses zoomed in slightly. Daniel let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "A mistake?" His voice grew louder. "You think you understand billion-dollar mergers? You stay at home. You attend charity lunches. You have no idea what it takes to run this company." Aisha's expression flickered, not with anger, but with hurt. "I've always supported you," she said quietly. "I only asked you to review the compliance risks." Support, he snapped. You contribute nothing. Nothing. Everything you see here, he gestured broadly at the glittering hall, the company logo projected in gold behind him, is because of me. Gasps rippled faintly through the crowd. The city skyline beyond the glass walls blinked like distant witnesses to the unraveling scene. Aisha stepped closer, lowering her voice. Daniel, please. Not like this. But pride had already consumed him. You are useless in this world, he said coldly, his voice no longer controlled. And you dare question me in front of my board? The word useless seemed to hang in the air, heavy and cruel. For a split second, time slowed. His hand rose. The sound of the slap cracked through the ballroom, sharp, echoing, impossible to ignore. A crystal glass shattered somewhere near the back of the room. Aisha's head turned slightly with the force, but she did not fall. She did not cry. Her palm instinctively shielded her belly. The entire ballroom froze. No music. No whispers. Only the distant hum of the city outside. Daniel's breathing was heavy, his chest rising and falling as reality began creeping into his eyes. And then, from the front table, a chair scraped against marble. The chairman of the board stood up. His expression was no longer neutral. It was resolute. Enough, he said firmly. And with that single word, the true storm began to gather. The silence in the grand ballroom was suffocating. The glittering chandeliers above no longer seemed warm, their golden light felt cold, reflecting sharply off the polished marble floors. Guests held their breath. Cameras tilted, capturing the tense tableau. Even the distant city below seemed hushed, as if Lagos itself had paused to witness the unfolding drama. Daniel's chest rose and fell unevenly, his pride wounded, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. He stared at Aisha, expecting submission, or at least fear. Instead, she stood still, serene, almost untouchable, her hand lightly resting over the curve of her belly. That calmness gnawed at him. From the head table, a quiet shuffle broke the spell. The chairman of the board, a tall man with graying temples and a reputation for unwavering composure, slowly rose. His polished black shoes whispered across the marble as the guests instinctively leaned back in their seats. Security guards halted mid-step, unsure if this was part of the evening's protocol. A legal advisor stepped forward as well, carrying a slim folder of documents. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of fine wine mixing with the subtle perfume of fresh orchids that lined the ballroom edges. Everyone sensed that the balance of power was about to shift. The chairman cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm, carrying easily across the stunned crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, pausing briefly to let the weight of his words settle, there is something everyone here should know. Daniel's eyes flicked toward him, disbelief written across his features. What are you talking about? He demanded, his voice sharp but tinged with unease. This is a celebration, not. Silence, Daniel, the chairman interrupted, his tone cutting through the tension like a scalpel. This is not up for debate. All eyes now turned toward the chairman. The room was a perfect storm of golden chandeliers, crystal glasses, and the sharp edges of anticipation. Employees shifted in their seats, murmurs died mid-word, and the media cameras focused intently, sensing the unfolding scandal. Aisha remained still, almost statuesque, her calm contrasting sharply with the storm brewing around her. The soft rustle of her gown as she adjusted her stance was the only movement, and yet it felt like a silent promise, a quiet power no one yet understood. The legal advisor stepped closer, placing the folder carefully on the table in front of the chairman. He opened it slowly, sliding documents toward the center, the faint rustling of paper echoing in the stillness. The chairman inhaled deeply, his gaze sweeping across the room, resting briefly on Daniel's rigid posture. This company, he said slowly, deliberately, has a true owner. Someone who has been silently guiding, observing, and protecting its legacy, someone you all thought was just an observer. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. Daniel's face paled. Aisha's eyes flickered, not with fear, but with a quiet, unyielding certainty. And in that suspended moment, the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the revelation that would shatter everything. The chairman's hands rested firmly on the folder as he slowly lifted the top document, letting the paper catch the chandelier light. Every movement felt deliberate, measured, and heavy with consequence. The ballroom, once alive with polite chatter and laughter, now seemed suspended in time, every guest frozen mid-breath, every camera lens focused, capturing the tension. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chairman began, his voice steady, "these documents confirm what no one here yet realizes. The true majority owner of this company is," he let the pause stretch, scanning the room with an almost theatrical patience. Aisha stepped forward, her posture regal, calm, and utterly in control. The soft cream fabric of her gown flowed around her as she approached the front of the room. Her hand rested lightly on her belly, an unspoken reminder of the life she carried, and the power she wielded. The chairman gestured to the document. "Miss Aisha holds 62% of all company shares. The full controlling stake. She has been the silent majority owner for years." A deafening gasp rippled through the room. Champagne glasses trembled in hands, a few even slipped from the trembling fingers of shocked board members. Cameras flashed violently, capturing every moment for media outlets and social feeds. Daniel's face drained of color. His confident posture crumbled, shoulders slumping. He opened his mouth, searching for words, but the reality of the revelation struck him before he could speak. What are you saying?" he stammered, voice breaking. I've been running this company. I've made every decision." Aisha's voice cut through the chaos, calm and measured. "You were running it, yes," she said quietly, almost conversationally, "but only with the authority I allowed you. All this time, Daniel, you were acting under my ownership." The room erupted with whispers. Board members exchanged shocked glances, some muttering about how they had been blind to the truth. Media crews scrambled, adjusting cameras to capture Aisha's composed expression, her quiet strength radiating like a beacon in the glittering hall. Daniel's fists clenched, his pride colliding with reality. Every arrogant word he had spoken, every public dismissal of Aisha, now echoed mockingly in his ears. The very empire he thought he had built on his own was hers, and she had allowed him to play the role of a leader, thinking he commanded what was never truly his. The chairman's voice carried across the stunned room once more. Effective immediately, the board recognizes Miss Aisha as the controlling shareholder. Her decisions are final. The authority previously assumed by Mr. Daniel is hereby subject to her approval. Daniel's knees nearly buckled. He stared at Aisha, disbelief and humiliation battling for dominance on his face. Cameras continued to flash, capturing the moment the world learned what he had never realized. The woman he dismissed, the one he underestimated, had always held the power. Aisha lifted her chin slightly, a soft but unwavering gaze, and in that instant, the balance of the room, and of Daniel's life, shifted forever. The ballroom, once glittering with laughter and champagne toasts, now felt heavy with the weight of revelation. The city lights outside the towering glass walls twinkled innocently, unaware of the storm inside. Guests shifted uneasily in their seats, glancing between Aisha and Daniel, sensing that the final chapter of this evening was about to unfold. Aisha stepped forward, her movements deliberate, measured, and serene. There was no anger in her eyes, only disappointment. The faint reflection of the chandeliers danced across her calm expression, illuminating the quiet authority she now wielded. "Daniel," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hushed room, "this company is not a playground for ego, nor is it a stage for humiliation. Effective immediately, you are removed from your position as acting CEO, pending a full investigation into your conduct." A ripple of murmurs spread through the board and guests alike. The words hung in the air like sharp crystal, precise, unyielding, undeniable. Daniel's jaw tightened, disbelief flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to plead, but no sound came. Security personnel, tall and disciplined, stepped forward quietly. They flanked him, their presence firm but unobtrusive. He glanced around the room, at the board members who once nodded at his every word, at the employees who had feared his judgment, at the media now recording every moment. Their eyes held a mixture of pity and astonishment. "Do you understand?" Aisha asked, her voice softer now, almost like a question rather than a command. Daniel swallowed hard, the color draining from his face. I understand," he muttered, his arrogance stripped bare in front of everyone. The security team gently guided him toward the exit. His steps were rigid, each one echoing against the marble floor like a defeated drumbeat. Guests watched in stunned silence as the man who once commanded power with confidence now left the room carrying nothing but the weight of his mistakes. Aisha turned back to face the board. Her posture remained composed, unshaken, the faint curve of a knowing smile touching her lips. "We will continue," she said quietly, "with integrity, respect, and the values this company was built on." The room exhaled collectively, as if the tension had been held in every breath since the slap. Cameras continued to click, but now the story was clear, the power had shifted. Respect, dignity, and rightful authority had reclaimed their place. As she looked out at the city skyline beyond the windows, Aisha felt a quiet sense of resolve. She had not needed to yell or fight. She had only needed to step forward. And in doing so, she had shown that true strength is measured not by force, but by courage, composure, and conviction. The fall of Daniel was complete. And the rise of Aisha, inevitable, dignified, and unstoppable, had begun. Months had passed since that night in the grand ballroom. The city of Lagos hummed below the high-rise windows of the company's headquarters, but inside, a new rhythm had taken hold, steady, purposeful, and unshakable. Aisha moved through her office with quiet confidence, her hand brushing over the polished surface of her desk. Stacks of reports and charts lay neatly organized, yet it was not the numbers that defined her power, it was her vision, her unwavering calm, and the respect she commanded without raising her voice. Employees passed by, nodding in silent acknowledgement, their admiration evident in the way they carried themselves. Under her leadership, the company had flourished. New partnerships had been secured. Markets expanded. Ethical practices strengthened. And yet, she never let the growth cloud her principles. Every decision was made with integrity, with foresight, and with a deep understanding of people, the very values her father had instilled in her. Meanwhile, Daniel's world had shifted drastically. Legal investigations confirmed misconduct, and his reputation crumbled as quickly as his pride had months before. News outlets covered the fall of the man who once thought he owned everything. For him, there were no celebrations, no applause, only the quiet echo of mistakes he could no longer deny. Aisha, however, did not watch his downfall with vindictive satisfaction. She had never needed revenge. She had needed justice. She had needed respect. And in achieving that, she had chosen herself, her dignity, her family, and the legacy entrusted to her. Sitting by the floor-to-ceiling window one evening, she looked out at the sunset painting the city in shades of orange and gold. Her hand rested lightly on her belly, a gentle reminder of new life, new beginnings, and the quiet power that often goes unnoticed until it cannot be ignored. A voice, calm and resonant, filled the narration. Power is not always loud. Strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes, the greatest force in a room is the one standing quietly, observing, and choosing the moment to act. Aisha had waited. She had watched. And when the time came, she reminded everyone, including her husband, that true authority is earned through wisdom, integrity, and courage. She turned away from the window, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Around her, the office buzzed with life, but she carried serenity in her steps, a subtle but unmistakable aura of command. Never underestimate the quiet strength of the woman standing beside you, the narrator concluded. And in that moment, it was clear, some victories do not need to be shouted. Some triumphs speak louder in silence. Some legacies endure, not because of power flaunted, but because of respect earned, dignity preserved, and courage chosen when it matters most. The story had ended, but her influence, and the lesson it carried, would echo far beyond the walls of that ballroom, far beyond the city itself.